Hey everyone, Dan here. We're about an hour after market close on Tuesday, July 20th. Today we're going to take a look at Clover Health. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. And also keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, ideas. These are not meant or intended to be investment or trading advice, and you should not take them as such. Do your own due diligence and make your own decisions based on your own assessment. All right, so CLOV, if you weren't aware, I'm for the time being giving CLOV a swing as one of my stocks that I cover daily. So if you're a proponent of that or a supporter of that and you haven't mentioned so in the comments, please do so. If you actually think there's a better ticker for me to cover daily, please leave that in the comments below as well. Currently I cover SoFi daily, and it seemed that there was interest in CLOV. I'm going to be giving some others a turn or a test as well, but I won't stop doing the CLOV daily updates while I test the others. I'll just sort of do things in conjunction with each other and kind of see who wins out. But there's only so many videos I can do in a day, and I don't want to just do the same stock or stocks every single day. So I do need some rotating spots, but I think I could easily have room for one more daily video. So the ticker battle has begun. All right, that's neither here nor there. Today, CLOV, relatively flat day, but slightly up. The overall markets, you see, up quite a bit more than CLOV. So while we saw yesterday sort of like CLOV win out quite tremendously, quite tremendously over the down markets. Today, you know, it sort of had a relatively like so-so day given the overall market. But of course, at this point, given the chart that you can see on the left-hand side there, I'm sure we will take any green day that we can. The volume still coming in less than half of the 3-month average. Now, I know that 3-month average, if we just take the chart and stick ourselves to 3 months here and close this puppy, that obviously has, you know, the middle of that 3 months was this huge run up where we saw this huge uptick in volume. But let me start off by saying this before we look at the chart and before we get into other indicators. If CLOV is going to come up and make a run at these upper price targets that I have here, which are a few fold, you know, there's this sticky period here in the 9s, there's this sticky period here in the 10s, and this sticky period here in the 11s. So basically, if it's going to work through the next $3 price zones and then ultimately start to come to my longer term price targets, which you can see my CLOV price targets video that I put out not too many days ago. I can't remember exactly when, but it's pretty recent in the video archive. If you search by date, you'll see CLOV price targets, and I go through all the ins and outs and why, and you know, the business element of things plus the chart element of things. But anyway, I'm looking for this 1325 as an initial, and then 1661 and 1788 to the upside. But regardless of any of that, if CLOV is going to have a hope of a sustained recovery of any sort, it's going to have to pick this volume back up. Now, I don't think it has to get up to these crazy levels, but I do think that we need to see something sustained more like in these areas here, you know, on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, somewhere around there. And on those days, if I flip over to the daily here, 623, 24, basically we saw oh, well, that's not the daily volume, is it? Let me get this off here, and let me see. 24th. Well, okay, we have 101 million. Oh, I guess it was. I was just not reading it correctly. But that is opposed to like this day 726 million. So I don't think that we really need to be that high, but I do think we need to come back closer to the 3-month average and sort of at least sort of flatten this out a little bit, you know, at least meet sort of like a mid-range here maybe. So that would put us, what, about 40 million or so, somewhere around there. I do think that we need to see the increase in volume and obviously buy volume if we're going to push up. But this sort of like, I know it doesn't necessarily feel like low volume compared to a bunch of other stocks, but I do think that it's going to continue to suffer if it can't get that level of interest back. All right, so obviously it hasn't had to come down to my 708 kind of, you know, lowest saddest price target that I have on the chart right now, so that's good. But its next most important thing for me is flipping that 861 from resistance to support, and so it's done a good job positioning itself there at the moment. Now, don't skewer me for this because it's hard to catch things early, but there's advantages to catching things early. There is potentially a channel forming here. Just keep in mind, this is only about 2 days old. So there's more likelihood that this is nothing than it is something. But to the extent that this price can continue to hold the upper and the lower bounds of this channel, this could be a great opportunity for it to develop in such and then use that up channel to drive the price upward. So I love channel plays. If you're not familiar, the way that I like to play them, if I'm actively trading the stock, meaning if I'm in and out and I want to have that active type of position, what I do is I dip by the bottom of the channel. So anytime it comes to the bottom and it shows a sign of strength, I dip by the bottom, keeping a tight stop loss if it falls out of the channel, and then I take profit at the top. And then I wait for it to come back down to the bottom, and I dip by again. And then I wait for it to come to the top, and I take profit. You could just rinse and repeat for as long as it holds the channel. Just keep in mind a couple of things. One, all channels eventually break. Sometimes a stock will hold the channel for a very long period of time. Now, the shorter the time frame that you're drawing the channel on, the shorter in days or in minutes or in hours it's likely to hold it. If you're looking at something like a daily chart, sometimes you can have things that hold for years. But eventually all channels break. Now, the other thing is, like I said, this has only tested the bottom twice. Okay, so a third test would mean a lot to confirming that a channel is here. The other thing, it's really only tested the top once. It was this one like weird swing up and then it came back down. Now, if this test holds, that'll be a second time, but that'll just be 2 tests of the upper and the lower bound each. So it's really still quite questionable whether or not this channel will even develop. But again, if it can, there is dramatic upside to catching a channel early, because the later in life you catch the channel, the sooner it's going to break, since everything ages out eventually. Sort of like if you started your life at 45 years old, you would have many years left. You would have less years of life than if you started your life at 0, like everyone does. So anyway, I'm going to be looking for that. That to me would be really, really great to see. That's on the hour time frame if you are taking a look at it. Now, looking at this sort of like shorter time frame compared to the daily, I think this is sort of helpful because there was that wild swing up, so it can sort of throw off some of the data. But looking at this here, the MACD recently has had this bullish crossover. That said, these bullish crossovers just aren't lasting very long. So in other words, this last one that we saw just lasted a trading day and then into the pre-markets, and then we had the bearish crossover. So these have been pretty short-lived bullish runs. And even this one here that looks as though it was pretty significant, that lasted less than a day before it then crossed to the bearish side of things. So yeah, bullish crossover at about what, 3:30? Is that what that time is? Well, whatever. We don't try to do that right on this. But I would just be cautious of these very, very like short-lived bullish runs. But that said, if it does continue to oscillate and cycle like we see it do here, that would be a further case bolstering the idea that it can stay in this channel. Now, obviously, the good thing about this channel, no, it's not this sort of like wildly parabolic move upward, but it is a sustained pattern that you can trade off of. It's also a sustained pattern that if you just have a longer position, you can watch it gradually increase in price in sort of a predictable way. And if it makes a move out of the channel, then it's becoming less predictable in that moment, and then you can decide what you want to do based on that. With the MAs, the other good thing on the hour here is we do have a recent, just today, bullish cross over the 20 over the 50. Now, I would like to see that. I would have liked to have seen it be much steeper. They're just sort of like moving parallel to each other at the moment. So I would want to see it catch like an uptick here. That said, again, if it's staying in the channel, it could be bobbing and weaving above and under it over and over and over again. So to me, short of a nice, huge green run up that's sustained, but like the likelihood of that being sustained is not high in my opinion. I would rather see the kind of slow but steady channel that can be predictable and played as such. On the RSI side of things, now here's to me a big test. We have the question of, can this sustain the midline here? Now it's coming up over the midline, and it hasn't done this for quite some time. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. It very recently came up over the midline, but it got pushed immediately back down, right? But that said, you can look at these sort of like you would look at the candlestick formations and the trends and the patterns that evolve on the price chart. You can kind of do that with the RSI oftentimes. So you see here, it came up, and the low that it made here was a higher low than it made back here. So we could be seeing some sustained buying pressure coming in on the RSI side of things as well. The question will be, can we get a bump into the 60s as we get into tomorrow and sort of confirm a higher high as well? And if so, then I think we have a good chance to pushing ourselves into overbought territory, which on this hour time frame has been a very long time since we've been there. Maybe not since here, which was June 29th. And that's when the price was in the 14s. So that feels like a long way away at this point. But there are whenever there's a path down, there's a path back up. But the question, there's a lot of questions and concerns, a lot of FUD around CLOV, obviously, and there's a lot to overcome. But there are some signs that things could be coming in. Now, to me, the big detractor is the volume. It needs the volume to be coming in. The volume doesn't look so bad if you're just taking into account these days. But if we pull back to a month again, you see these huge volume days here, and then where we are these days is just incredibly, incredibly low on the scale. And that's not even accounting for the largest volume days back here in the hundreds of millions. So, I do think that, we got to be getting ourselves at least to a midline between like today's volume and the average volume, and sort of at least bringing those together is sort of like a middle ground kind of period if we want to sustain even this channel. To be honest, I think it will require that. All right, because as we know, there is definitely pressure from the short sellers. So speaking of buy volume that just needs to be there, Ortex reporting a short interest change today of a little over 2%, bringing the short interest percentage of the free float a bit above 22%. So we know anything over 20 is very, very high. Historically speaking, anything over 10 is sort of like eyebrow raising. The utilization, a bit over 83 at the moment, which once the utilization reaches 100, that means that all available shares to lend at lending institutions are lent, and so therefore are unavailable to be borrowed. On the well, that's more short stuff. We know about the fail to deliver spike that we saw here at the end of June. Still sort of like more to figure out as far as like what that means, why that was and what's going on there. One thing that I did want to point out, to the extent that these sort of impact anyone's buying decisions, retail, institutions, what have you, there is still this $9.50 price consensus from the analysts, and that is with this abysmal spread of 1 buy, 1 hold, and 2 sell ratings from the analysts. That said, even with the sell ratings, the lowest price target on here is $9. All right, and so we're sitting at $8.30, well, in the after hours, $8.40 right now. So even for the analysts that are saying sell, they still have a price target higher than the current price. So this again could play a factor. Again, not because I think the analysts are necessarily right. I'm obviously going with my own price targets that I have pointed out, but it's more to the extent that folks see that analysts are presenting that there's this upside. It's a relatively low cost stock. Maybe there's potentially it's in an interesting space, the healthcare space, and same with institutions. Maybe they see obvious upside here, and maybe that the beatdown has subsided to a degree, but just some factors to consider as you're trying to make decisions along the way. But that will do it for this video. I hope you had a good trading day. I hope your week is off to a nice start, and I appreciate you watching. I will see you in the next video.